All right, party peoples of the interwebs, Canada officially has a newly unelected prime minister. Viva Frei, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler in my home office, and before any fake news fact checkers out there say,
Viva, he was elected with 152,000 votes of registered liberals to become the new prime minister of a country of 38 million people.
I'm being facetious when I say he was unelected.
But he was unelected.
For those of you who might not know what is going on in the 51st state of these United States of America, I'm joking, Canadians, I'm joking. But for those of you who may not know what exactly is going on up in the country of Canada, we have a new prime minister, one who was not actually elected in any national election, one who is a WEF globalist whore of the highest order. And by the way, I'm told that saying whore instead of whore is actually more polite. He is a WEF Davos whore stooge, Mark Carney.
Welcome to this session, Carbon Markets, a conversation with Bill Gates, Mark Carney, Annette Nazareth, and Bill Winters. My name is Nicole Schwab. I'm the co-director of the Platform to Accelerate Nature-Based Solutions at the World Economic Forum, and I will be your moderator for this session.
And when I call Mark Carney a WEF Davos-speaking globalist whore, I'm not being hyperbolic. He is one of the highest order. But before we even get into that, one thing to clarify, Pierre Poilievre did not lose the national election to Mark Carney. There are people out there seemingly under the misapprehension, the misunderstanding that Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, lost the election to Mark Carney, because everybody's saying, oh my goodness, Mark Carney is the new Prime Minister of Canada. He has become the new Prime Minister of Canada, but only by virtue of internal rules within the Liberal Party. Because when Justin Trudeau resigned, he didn't just resign, he didn't trigger new elections. He did something so insidiously corrupt, it's only become apparent in retrospect. So when Justin Trudeau resigned, he said, I'll be replaced by the next replacement. That will be determined by a robust national leadership race. They had a rigged race to begin with, but we'll get there in a second. So technically there is a new Prime Minister of Canada, but only by virtue of the rules within the Liberal Party, not because there has been a national election. That is scheduled to be held no later than October-ish 2025.
I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
Canadian politics is complicated and oftentimes boring, so I hope that clarifies it for anybody out there who is under the misunderstanding that Pierre Poilievre lost the election.
No.
That hasn't happened yet, and that won't happen for a little while, because when Justin Trudeau resigned, he also prorogued Parliament until March 24th. The corruption is so insidious. I have as my banner over on Twitter an expression by Lily Tomlin. No matter how cynical you get, it's difficult to keep up. It is impossible to keep up with this level of scoundrelness. Scoundrelry? Whatever, you know what I'm saying. It's impossible to keep up with this level of chicanery, because when Justin Trudeau resigned, he didn't just say, I'm resigning, triggering a new election, and we will have something of an expedited leadership race. He said, I am resigning, but I'm also proroguing Parliament. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means, it basically means calling an end to the current session for a certain period of time, and that certain period of time was not a week, it wasn't 2 weeks, it wasn't 1 month, it was upwards of 3 months for which Justin Trudeau prorogued Parliament, during which time there is no government in session. Now, why is that relevant? Well, the insidiousness of that strategy has become clear in retrospect. When you have prorogued Parliament, it's impossible for any other member of Parliament to submit a motion for non-confidence to trigger a national election. So now that Mark Carney has been anointed the leader of Canada, they can't even trigger an election, a national election, by way of non-confidence vote until government is back in session in a couple of weeks.
Let's take a brief pause from this vlog for a word from our sponsor, the Chicago Steak Company. People, you know me, and you know that I love red meat. Right now, the Chicago Steak Company has an unbeatable offer exclusively for my viewers. When you visit mychicagosteak.com/Viva, you'll receive 4 free bourbon sirloin steaks, a bottle of their signature steak seasoning, and free shipping on your first order above $199. This means tender, juicy steaks, deliciously seasoned with the best flavor on earth. Chicago Steak Company's premium cuts, from their beautifully marbled ribeyes to perfectly aged New York strips, are exactly what your holiday spread needs to impress every guest. All you need to do is head over to chicagosteakcompany.com/Viva and place your first order of $199 or more to unlock this offer. You'll receive 4 free bourbon sirloin steaks, a signature steak seasoning, and free shipping right to your door. Chicago Steak Company offers premium hand-cut, aged to perfection steaks. They are absolutely delicious. There will be free shipping plus that offer on $199 or more on your first order. 100% satisfaction guarantee ensures quality you can trust with every order. Each steak is flash frozen, vacuum sealed, and delivered with care, ready to enjoy whenever you are. So head over to mychicagosteak.com/Viva. Place your first order of $199 or more to unlock that offer. Once again, mychicagosteak.com/Viva. It is flipping delicious. And now back to the vlog.
Now, some might say that Justin Trudeau's proroguing Parliament was sort of an underhanded way of subverting democracy, that it wasn't entirely lawful, and that it abused of the discretionary power to do so. Some people said that. Some people took Trudeau to court for that. And lo and behold, a federal judge in Canada said, no, it was totally okay what Justin Trudeau did. A judge concluded that Justin Trudeau's prorogation of Parliament was totally lawful and there's no room for the court to intervene, which stands in stark contrast to the precedent that was started under Boris Johnson when he prorogued Parliament in England in the context of the Brexit vote, and a court there said unanimously 11-0 that Boris Johnson's prorogation of Parliament was unlawful, and it was as though government was never prorogued.
This court has already concluded that the Prime Minister's advice to Her Majesty was unlawful, void, and of no effect. This means that the order in council to which it led was also unlawful, void, and of no effect, and should be quashed. This means that when the Royal Commissioners walked into the House of Lords, it was as if they had walked in with a blank sheet of paper. The prorogation was also void and of no effect. Parliament has not been prorogued. This is the unanimous judgment of all 11 justices.
So when the courts want to declare the prorogation of Parliament unlawful in the context of someone who is politically unpopular, such as Boris Johnson, they can find a way to do it, even though my understanding is that it had never been done before. When they like the actor, the political player involved, they can find a way to justify what would otherwise be a clear, unambiguous, abusive prorogation of Parliament. So Justin Trudeau prorogued Parliament for darn near 3 months. It is still prorogued at the time of shooting this vlog. In that time, they had their robust national leadership race, in the context of which, because it was a robust national leadership race, they disqualified a candidate, Ruby Dalla. They disqualified a candidate, not only a candidate who was a woman of color. They disqualified a candidate because it was such a robust national leadership race. They had to disqualify candidates who might have been a little too popular for the race.
The leadership race is going on. These rules are like purely internally determined. Nobody, are they opaque, or does anybody even know what they are?
Well, everything seems to operate in secrecy, and despite our numerous questions as candidates as to why data sciences, we all know the affiliation with the ownership of data sciences and the Prime Minister. Many of us questioned how we could have the integrity that the race required if data sciences was actually controlling all of the registered lists of members for the Liberal Party. There were questions in regards to Mr. Carney's, donors, with 21 people having foreign addresses. There were many questions, but unless you're the blue-eyed boy, you never ever get asked. And obviously someone, who was making history as the first woman of color, as one of the first women, to run from a multicultural community for the leadership of the Liberal Party and for Canada's next Prime Minister, they wanted to come out with these false, fabricated, allegations and violations.
And I am not a fan or a player in the world of identity politics. The only reason I raise the fact that they disqualified a person of color female candidate is because Justin Trudeau barely a month or two ago was besmirching, denigrating America as to how misogynist they were, that they had their chance to vote for a female president, that being Kamala Harris, and they chose not to because of their internal misogyny, and yet somehow the two female remaining candidates of the Liberal race can't even get 9% of the total vote to the white male globalist who hasn't even lived in Canada for the better part of the last decade.
Now, it shouldn't be that way. It wasn't supposed to be that way. We were supposed to be on a steady, if difficult sometimes, march towards progress. And yet, just a few weeks ago, the United States voted for a second time to not elect its first woman president. Everywhere, women's rights and women's progress is under attack, overtly and subtly. But I want you to know that I am, and always will be, a proud feminist. You will always have an ally in me and in my government.
So yeah, Mr. Blackface wearing, woman groping, elbowing in the boobie, 2 times ethic breaching, misogynist, when you look around and you call people names, it's because it's true of you and your filthy, filthy party. And lo and behold, they now have their newly anointed leader, a globalist of the highest order. Oh yeah, and did I mention he also carries 3 separate passports? This globalist shill, WEF, Davos speaking. He has 3 passports, Canada, England, and Ireland. He spent the better part of the last decade in England serving as the chair of the Bank of England. This man is a globalist of the highest order, and if you have any doubts, just listen to the words that are coming out of his mouth.
Look, there is some stress, and it's great that there is that. It's not great that it happens, but it's great that there's that scrutiny, and there's that skepticism or healthy skepticism about ESG labels or sustainable labels. And that, again, is one of the reasons we're having this ruthless, relentless focus on net zero, because in the end, look, we can't stabilize the climate unless we get to net zero. And it's a simple, these are hard numbers. Your emissions are either A or B. They're going up or down. And if they're going down, are they going down consistent with the science? We anchor it in the science, the same science the UN and others use for the 1.5 degree objectives.
Now, if you want to truly understand how insidiously corrupt this entire process was, when Justin Trudeau announced his resignation, subject to a robust national leadership race, everyone was thinking, oh, it's going to be Chrystia Freeland. She's already been a member of parliament for an extended period of time. She's got the requisite experience. And then they just pluck in this guy who's not even an MP. They pluck him in, drop him in the race, and he gets 86% of the vote. Mark Carney has spent the better part of the last decade living outside of Canada. He was out there trying to fight the will of the people when it came to Brexit. He is an open opponent of populism, and most importantly, he is all for crippling energy policies at home, while he, through his company, Brookfield Assets Management, invests in the same dirty energy in countries that don't have similar regulations.
Do you support the Prime Minister's decision to veto the Northern Gateway pipeline, Mr. Carney?
I understand the veto of the Northern Gateway pipeline.
You support it?
Given both environmental and commercial reasons.
Do you support it?
I think it was sensible. I wasn't involved in the decision, but I think it was the right decision.
And yet your company has invested billions of dollars in oil companies in both Brazil and the UAE to buy pipelines. You bought billions of dollars of pipelines as a company in the last 5 years. Do you support those investments?
Mr. Poilievre, there is a global energy system, and one of the issues, I'm trying to explain a bit of how the economy works. One of the
Thank you so much.
It may help. One of the issues for this committee in thinking about a sustainable transition.
Do you support it?
Where is Canada's role in those as energy transitions from fossil fuels to renewables? And in different jurisdictions, into different geography, it matters. It matters, and this is a fundamental point.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. This is a fundamental. You're finally getting to a point.
You've exceeded
that
the
is
time.
Relevant to this committee's inquiry.
What you're saying is you oppose pipelines in Canada, but you support them in the UAE and in Brazil. That's what you've actually said.
There are specific.
That's your double standard.
It is not a double standard.
It is a double standard.
No, it's not.
You make billions of dollars off foreign pipelines, and you shut them down here at home, putting our people out of work.
And if you think you're hearing things funny, you probably are, but they are 100% accurate. He has been the chair of Brookfield Assets Management, an asset management firm that has upwards of $1 trillion in assets that they manage. Not only was he the chair of this company for the longest of times, he was also advising Justin Trudeau behind the scenes while simultaneously making investments through Brookfield Assets Management as a result of that policy that he was advising Trudeau on. Now, some might call that good politics. I just call that good old corruption. 3 passport-carrying WEF stooge frequently speaks at Davos events and often attends the Bilderberg meetings. This is your newly hand-selected Prime Minister of Canada. Holy cow, did I talk about how many votes he got to become the next unelected Prime Minister of Canada? In the context of this robust national leadership race, nobody knows exactly how the final vote was tallied. What we know as of now is that apparently there were 400,000 voters that had registered in order to vote, but apparently they only accepted something like 152,000 of those registered voters to vote on Mark Carney. What happened to the other 250,000 votes? Nobody knows. How were they registered? Nobody knows. Who were they? Nobody knows. Did they use electronic Dominion voting machines?
You're goddamn right I did!
But my goodness, they just determined the future of Canada. And now Canada is stuck with this Mark Carney as its newly unelected Prime Minister, at the very least for the next 2 weeks until government is back from its prorogation, and we don't know for how much longer after that, because although it's possible for other MPs, Jagmeet Singh, I'm looking at you, it's possible for other MPs to submit a motion or to vote on a motion of non-confidence to trigger a national election earlier than the October 2025 deadline. We don't know if they're going to do it because they're all a bunch of corrupt pieces of rubbish. Bear in mind that the only reason a non-confidence vote has not passed, triggering a new election, is because of a de facto support that Jagmeet Singh and his NDP have been giving the Liberals. They signed on to that supply and confidence agreement that propped up the Liberals for the last 2+ years, all the while Jagmeet Jagmeet Singh, that scumbag extraordinaire that he is, goes on Twitter to complain about everything the Liberals are doing. And why would Jagmeet Singh have propped up the Liberal Party that he claims to hate so much for such an extended period of time? Many hypothesize it was so that he could secure his federal pension, which accrued in February 2025. So congratulations, Jagmeet. You sold out your country for your federal pension. You know that you're going to get voted out of office now in the next election, which might make you want to put off an election for as long as humanly possible, just so you can get some of that sweet, sweet government dough. But that is why the Liberals have been in power for the last couple of years, and while we can't even rely on Jagmeet Singh, even now that he secured his federal pension, to trigger a new election. So Canada could, in theory, be stuck with Mark Carney, an unelected Prime Minister, until October 2025, and that's assuming they even hold elections in 2025. Some people might rightly fear, and I am one of them, that they're going to find some way to postpone an election. Maybe they learned the Zelensky rule of postponing elections indefinitely, have a crisis, declare martial law, and then you don't need to hold elections anymore. I mean, we know that there are record numbers of people on terror watch lists getting nabbed at the US border trying to cross into the US, which means they're in Canada, which means that something terrible can happen, requiring the declaration of martial law and the postponement of any election. Or maybe they learned the Romanian lesson of law, which is if you don't like your opponent, annul the results of the election and disqualify your political opponent. That's right, you have to indefinitely postpone elections and or disqualify your opponents in order to preserve democracy. With all that said, I am fairly certain that there is going to be some meaningful dirt on Mark Carney coming up during this next election cycle, if only the corruption that we know of, 3 passports, WEF, Davos, Bilderberg Group, a total globalist tour, but I think there's going to be other dirt that is going to be exposed on Mark Carney. There is an image of him with his wife and Ghislaine Maxwell floating around the internet. You can only draw so much of a connection from that photograph. There are stories of how he attended a party with Prince Andrew after the sex scandal had broken. You can draw whatever conclusions you want from all of that, but there is already some controversy as relates to the decision of Brookfield Assets Management when he was chair to move their offices from Toronto, I believe, at the very least to New York, because apparently taxes and business are better in the States, Canadian jobs be damned, and apparently he lied during the debates about whether or not he was involved in the decision to do so. He said he wasn't, they did it after he left, when in fact he penned the letter authorizing or promoting the decision, so he was well at the helm of that ship, that decision to move the business of Brookfield Assets Management from Canada to America. Despite everything negative he has to say about America now, he is in fact the killer of jobs in Canada for the benefit of America. Set that aside, that's not big enough for me. I think true corruption is going to come out if Canadians are listening, but that is where things are at. By the way, stop. Have you turned on notifications yet? Are you subscribed? Go down there and do it. It takes 5 seconds and it's totally free. That is where things are at in Canada. It's a total poop show. It's a little complicated, so I hope I broke it down and gave you the essentials, but I think those are the essentials to be continued, to be followed. If you like what to do, you know what to do. Most importantly, exercise, eat healthy, sunlight, talk to people in real life, and now you know your vlog. Peace out, peeps. Booyah!
Frédéric Plante with the Globe and Mail. You were the vice chairman at Brookfield Asset Management prior to
the chair. I was the chair.
Sorry. In the fall, they moved their head office from Toronto to New York. Did you approve of that decision, and what does this say about your commitment to growing Canada's economy and betting on Canada as for now?
Okay. So 2 things. I'll just correct a few factual things. One, I was chair of Brookfield Asset Management. I ceased to be chair on the 15th, I think, of January, when I announced for leadership. Also ceased to be chair of Bloomberg as well. Ceased to be United Nations Special Envoy on Climate Action and Finance. Ceased to be a number of other things. So I resigned all my positions because I am all in for Canada, all in for this leadership, all in during this time of crisis to build our great country, okay? That's the first thing. Second, the formal decision of the board happened after I ceased to be on the board. I do not have a connection with Brookfield Asset Management. No longer have a role, obviously, as I resigned in the middle of January.